Chapter 1. The Flight. It was Christmas Eve, 1971. Julianne and her mother were boarding a flight through the Peruvian Amazon. The sky looked normal. The air felt normal. Nothing suggested that the next hour would tear an aircraft apart. The plane lifted off, climbing toward thick clouds stacked like dark walls across the sky. Passengers tightened their seatbelts. Lightning flickered in the distance. Quiet, harmless, far away. At least, that's how it seemed. Within minutes, the aircraft plunged into a storm so violent that even the flight attendants lost control of their movements. The cabin lights flickered. The windows glowed white with every strike. Julianne remembered one thing clearly: the sound of the engines changing tone. A deep shudder, like metal being pushed out of shape. Then came the moment no one truly registers before it happens. The instant when fear becomes fact. A flash, a crack that didn't sound like thunder, and then stillness. The aircraft had broken apart. Chapter 2. The Fall. Julianne didn't feel herself being thrown. She didn't feel the seatbelt cut into her waist. She didn't even hear herself scream. She opened her eyes and saw nothing but sky. And then the tops of trees rising toward her like an ocean of needles. She was still strapped to her row of seats, 3 seats locked together, falling as a single piece. The wind roared past her ears, then vanished as she slipped into unconsciousness. Her descent lasted roughly 90 seconds, long enough for most people to understand what was happening, long enough for terror to become absolute. But Julianne didn't experience any of that. She simply fell. Somewhere below her, the Amazon canopy caught the seats like a net, branches snapping, leaves breaking, momentum bleeding away. It is still one of the most improbable survival moments in recorded history. Julianne fell nearly 3,000 meters and lived. She woke to silence. Light filtered through leaves above her, blurry and unfamiliar. Her collarbone throbbed. One eye was swollen shut. Her shoes were gone. But she was alive. And she was alone. Chapter 3. The Jungle. The Amazon rainforest is not a place built for the injured. Heat presses from all sides. Insects strike at every exposed patch of skin, and even the smallest plants can tear open a wound. Julianne stood, dizzy and shaking. She called for her mother. No answer. She knew 2 things. The plane had crashed, and no one was coming quickly. Her father had taught her something years earlier, almost as a passing comment. When you're lost in the rainforest, find water. Follow it downstream. It will eventually lead you to people. That memory might have saved her life. She listened carefully, and after a minute of standing still, she heard it. A faint trickle, a tiny stream. Julianne began to walk. She waded through water that hid sharp roots beneath its surface. Mosquitoes bit into her skin so relentlessly that she stopped trying to swat them away. She slept curled on the muddy ground, using the sound of the moving stream as her anchor. Every hour added weight to the injuries she carried. She'd fractured her collarbone. Her arm was deeply cut. Her face was bruised. Her legs trembled with each step. But she followed the water, day after day. The rainforest opened and closed around her like a breathing thing. She found pieces of the plane, a seat cushion, a torn piece of metal, a half-burned shoe. None of it helped her survive. Somewhere in that endless green world, her body kept moving long after her mind accepted she might not make it. Still, she followed the water. Chapter 4. The 10th day. By the 10th day, Julianne's injuries had begun to fester. Flies had laid eggs in one of her open wounds. Her strength was nearly gone, her vision blurred from exhaustion. But then, she saw something unnatural in the distance. A straight line, a clean edge, something built. It was a small shelter used by Peruvian loggers. Inside were tools, scraps, and, unbelievably, a can of gasoline. Julianne had read somewhere that gasoline could kill maggots. She poured a few drops onto her wound. The pain was sharp, sudden, and overwhelming. But it worked. She lay down inside the shelter and waited, drifting in and out of consciousness. Hours later, voices approached. 3 men entered the clearing and froze when they saw her. A young girl, barely standing, covered in dirt and insect bites, sunburned and shaking. Julianne spoke softly. "My name is Julianne Kopka. I was in the plane crash." The men exchanged looks of disbelief. They had seen the wreckage. Everyone assumed there were no survivors, but there she was, the only one. They cared for her, fed her, and brought her by boat toward the nearest settlement. From there, she was flown back to safety. Julianne had survived something that statistically should have been impossible. Chapter 5. Aftermath. Investigators later confirmed that every other passenger on the aircraft had died. Julianne had been the only person whose fall was slowed enough by the canopy to survive impact. She eventually became a biologist, working in the same Amazon rainforest that nearly took her life. For the rest of her life, she carried no triumph in the story, only gratitude and a quiet sadness that survival often carries. Her survival wasn't luck alone. It was instinct. It was knowledge. It was movement when standing still meant death. And perhaps it was something else, something that kept her walking through 10 days of a world no human is built for. Closing. Some stories remind us of bravery. Some remind us of tragedy. But once in a while, a story reminds us of the impossibility of nature itself. Julianne Kopka fell from the sky, and somehow, the earth chose to let her live. This The Night Archive. Thank you for listening.